Good morning and welcome, everyone. As you have heard, today's talk on the secret cycles. In the previous one, we had talked about general cycles. And we had mentioned from chapter 3 of the ocean, where Mr. Judge gives a synopsis of the whole evolutionary process, these points that I would like to repeat. Who can tell me what a circling or a round is? We had said that the Earth chain is made up of 7 globes, but we must not think that these globes are separate from one another. We said that they intermingle with one another and they roll in space as one mass. When our consciousness is on one, we do not perceive the others. And we had distributed a diagram where it showed that the present humanity has gone through A, B, C, and now occupy D. And as we have now moved beyond the middle point, this is the most material that we are ever going to be. Now we are cycling towards the spirituality. All this was discussed in the previous talk. And where are we going after D? E, F, G. As you can see, D is the middle. It's the fourth, and it is the most solid substance. Coordination and consubstantiality, we had also discussed that these globes differ in their material substance, but they roll together. Coordination means rolling together, but they are not consubstantial because their substance is different from one another. Now, today's talk is going to fit into this mode also, because the human family is the one that is going through these cycles. And one circling, we had said, was going through all of the life wave, going through A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and at the end of G, the highest achievable perfection having been obtained, this mass will no longer exist because it cannot support human life to elevate it. It has reached its highest point and it gives its energy into a space, and then a new set of globes will come about for the next humanity to take its abode on, for the perfectibility to continue. What are the secret cycles? Everywhere in the teachings, we discussed number 7. Number 7 is the key number for this manvantara. We have 7 principles. Look at the earth. It has 7 layers or levels of consciousness or 7 possible achievements in perfectibility, if you look at it that way. Now, we are told also on page 134 of the ocean that a Mahamanvantara is 311 trillion 40 billion years. Within that framework, we had discussed, another student had discussed, the Golden Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, and the Dark Age, which this one is. We are now in Kali-Yuga, which is the Dark Age, when everything is mixed up. And it will continue in this manner for a while until it gets sorted out. Only 5,000 years and a little bit more of the Kali-Yuga has been spent, and that is 432,000 years. And I will put that number on the board for us. 432,000 years is the age we're in. So these are great periods of time that kind of taxes our mind a little bit. We find it extremely difficult to understand when the Bible and other religious books have their own agenda to put forward. So Kali-Yuga is where we are, and within these cycles then we have to figure out where the human ego is. What exactly are we talking about? Well, first race, second race, third race, fourth race, fifth race, correct? We are the fifth sub-race of the fifth root. What is the root? The Aryan race. Okay, this is the background. Please keep it in mind. It is said that men's luck changes every 7 years. It is based on calculation because each human being changes every 7 years. But the change is correlative to these roots. If we can understand who or what we are, we can figure out where our characteristics, our strengths, and our weaknesses come from. And we can do something about it. We are not helpless little human beings. We are the human family of the gods. Human family of the gods. In plural, because these hierarchies that give us our true nature are gods. They're in the higher heavens, and they want to elevate us to where their supreme abode is, if we would only fit ourselves in this progressive march towards perfectibility. And in this statement that the 7-year period comes to each and every human being, there is a dim and partial synopsis of the psychophysiological abbreviation that the living tissue contains, because the impress is in it. The impress of the lives are in it. Where did it start? Beginningless beginning, because we are part of that evolutionary period, and from the beginning we are there. No change can come about unless the soul, the spirit, is within, because the change comes from inside out. So our earth then has a similar mission. It has its own regent, which is subservient to the other divine globes of the solar system, But nevertheless, it progresses from within itself, inside out. It is not dead. It is a living globe, and it is very much alive. And it is our aim to do what? As we are uplifting ourselves, we are uplifting everything in the universe with us, because we are the intelligences that affect everything in the universe. We are the human family of the gods. Please remember it. So, the sleep is a recapitulation of the reincarnation cycle of man. What do we do every night? We go through these phases. It is also a recapitulation of the whole planetary cycle of his existence. Planetary cycle of existence. This student was a little bit shocked to read that, by the way. This student had learned that reincarnation cycle is recapitulated in our sleep. But the other statement, that also the planetary cycle is recapitulated in sleep, was quite shocking. So, the physical life of man is also a recapitulation of his past experiences. And Mr. Judge tells us in many articles, especially the one where he discusses the inner life of man, that the tensile strength of the cohesive forces within the principles and between the principles is also predetermined. What is that dependent on? By the attitude, relationship toward matter, how we live our life, how we conduct ourselves, and how we perform our duties. Because at the beginning, when the substance of our universe was being formed, we were the intelligences giving it impulse in the direction it has gone. We're responsible for all of the material that is around us. We're not separate from it, we're part of it. We are the intelligent forces that give it that impulse. So, this recapitulation then is dependent on the previous cycles that we have lived. We have lived through these cycles. The first, second, third, fourth, and fifth races. We are the fifth sub-race of the fifth root, but we were also all the other subs. So what is the lowest that human life can actually descend to? HPB tells us in the Secret Doctrine that this is the most solidified globe that we're ever going to be on, being the fourth, which is this one here, and now we are on the ascending cycle. Do we have to then continue this many years in Kali-Yuga? Do we not have an obligation to move it forward towards the golden age by our living, by our thought, by our conduct, our duty to our neighbors, our human family? We are the human family of the gods. All this environment exists for our experience so that we can come to realize internally who we are and conduct ourselves accordingly. So the first 7 years then recapitulates the first race. So when the baby is born, is that baby, it looks helpless, doesn't it? The baby looks helpless because the baby is dependent on its physical well-being, on the mother more than anything else. Mother's nutrition, mother's protection, and mother guiding it to grow. It grows, but the guidance comes from the mother. So what is it doing? What did we do in the first race? We were descending into materiality. Look at the baby. Everything goes in his mouth. He wants to know what things are. He wants to taste everything because that's the only way he can figure out what it is, the solidity, the taste. Everything goes in his mouth. Watch the baby. The baby is not helpless because that baby can express itself internally if the mother is attuned to that baby's inner life. This student, having experienced it, I know that the writings are correct in what it says. because our son communicated even though he could not speak. So, what does it do in the second? What are we achieving in the second race? What about the third race? Do we think about it? Because we discussed it. We discussed it a little bit, and I gave page numbers from the Secret Doctrine where we could go to, because it tells us what it is, it tells us where it took place, and it tells us a little bit about its mission. So this is the second race, is the formative, Devakani formative. Third is the one, she says, where we went through the most change. What is the third? Okay, 7 to 14, what happens to the child between 7 and 14? At 7, the mind is lit. It becomes a responsible human being. The soul then is there, correct? At 21, we become an adult, because the brain is still growing. The mind has to have its proper vehicle in order to do the correct impress. So people get married at 18. Are they really ready for such an great movement in life? Because these sections are not arbitrary. They're correlated to our life altogether. So we need to be very careful as to, and we say 7, but it's an average. It can be 8, sometimes maybe it is 9, it can be 6. So from egg-born, and HPB apologizes for making such a statement in the Secret Doctrine. She says, we were egg-born, and we went to male and female, and then we divided into men and women. So this, in the middle of the third race, not only we got a mind that was lit, but also we separated into sexes. What happened in the fourth? What developed in the fourth? In each one characteristics or one principle or one ability is developed. What's our fourth principle? And what's in the fifth? Mind. Yeah, so each one then develops one. Our mind principle, kamamanas, then in the fifth is fully developed. It is mental passional, whereas in the fourth it is passion. In here it is mental passional. So mental is trying to kind of move it a little bit, and HPB came to move it a little bit more, to show us that we have a divine mind. Divine mind. So science does not accept this philosophy as yet. The philosophy of theosophy is the correct modular explanation of our principles. Without knowing who or what we are, we cannot change anything. And it is necessary to bring about change. Look what this says here. We cannot stop short of a less distance in our search for the forces governing the alterations taking place during life in the qualities and interrelationships of our principles. It is for each one of us to figure out what has the predominant play in our life, and not let our feelings and emotions control our activity. Emotions and feelings move us from correct cognition because it changes. It is dependent on like and dislike. We cannot make decisions on likes and dislikes. What needs to be had? The student read in the Gita that we have to have this correct discrimination, and we have to have a steadfastness in the Supreme Spirit. Devotion to the Supreme Spirit is the one that enables that discriminative faculty to come forth. So it is interconnected. One without the other will not provide us that correct discrimination where we know what is the right thing to do. So, if we take this 7-year period to be correct, then the rounds are a prophetic implication for the future, and also the correct interpretation of the relationship to our tendencies, impulses, and external relationships that we have brought from the various lives previously, and now we're living through this life. It is correlated. And it is stated that the lowest point that we can fall is in the 4th round. It says that the lowest hell to which human life can descend in a Mahamanvantara of the 311 trillion 40 billion years is in the 4th race, 4th sub-race of the 4th great race in the 4th globe in the 4th round. So we have already passed it. What happened in that? Do we remember? She mentions it everywhere. Atlantis sank. It did not reach its highest possible perfectibility because humanity gave into its desires and were not following the correct path. It sank under the Atlantic Ocean. So we are Atlanteans re-emerging into the 5th because now thought has freedom. Atlantean race was a spiritual race. Their third eye was fully functional. They made their choices knowingly. In the 3rd, we blundered because our mind was newly lit. We were given material toys to discover, just like the baby does, and we wanted to discover it because this is a natural tendency we're going to go through. But it doesn't mean that we leave all of our spirituality behind and immerse ourselves only in materiality. So we blundered as a natural outcome of that evolutionary process because we were spiritual here also. But in the 4th, we did whatever we did knowingly because our spiritual third eye was open and we cultivated evil and malicious conduct with that spirituality present in ourselves. Now in the 5th, all of this creativity that is going around is as a result of kama manas being perfected, because that is what comes about, material success, because its creativity is concentrated on materiality. What we need to do is move into the spiritual aspect of the mind, the divine mind, and have the higher mind become active so that it can move it towards its spiritual life. It says that the passional 4th stock is mainly in Europe. So the European stock is the 4th, but the American stock is mainly the 5th. That's why the difference in thought processes between that and this. This is not mine. I'm simply bringing it out from here. Because I come from that stock also. I have been put over here for a reason, obviously. So, let's see. So, the 3rd race was Lemurians and the 4th was Atlanteans. The 5th is the Aryan, and we are the 5th subrace of the 5th root, circling outwards towards spirituality. So what is it dependent on? On our discriminative powers being active correct cognition. That is why we're constantly recommended to meditate. Okay, so it says here, one, fully understanding these hidden cycles, because these are the hidden cycles that our life every 7 years recapitulates, and every night when we go to sleep, we go through all of it again, over and over again. But the point is, until the divine mind is awake and fully yoked to buddhi, which is our discriminative power, we don't have the memory of it when we come back. Why? Because the brain is not able to retain anything. It goes to sleep, and so the spiritual essence in us is free to live wherever it goes to live. What is it? A stardust. What is its affinity towards? A stardust. Obviously, it communicates with the gods. We go to the sphere of the gods when we're asleep. We call it what? Dream world. But really, that is the real life of the soul, and this is its reflection, which is guided through the personality. If the personality wants to become a permanent aspect of that principle, it has to subdue all of the lower elements in itself and align itself to the higher aspect of the ego to become permanent in that ego. And it says here, these complex overlays and complex influences could be traced to major events in our lives. And we all know we have had major events in our lives. So, the major events, deeds, crucial choices for good and evil are all referent to these cycles that we have passed before, as well as this one. Could we see the nature of the inner subplanes most affected, the root, sap, and the family race in which these things occurred might be understood. Very interesting. We don't have to go to the astral light to figure out where we have been. The imprint of where we have been is within ourselves. So, until even the lost individuality, exact name, place, history might be traced, it says, through these mathematical psychophysics. Is it not, it says, obvious that we, possessed of all these keys, do not know our own nature? And why can we not work the combination of our character and predict what circumstances, what dates and influences, temptations and affinities would cause the tumblers to click and take us to a place in the core of our own nature, if only we would leave the door open, or the road that leads to it clear and open. Well, all this is possible for us. This is from the Secret Doctrine 1. The danger was this, says HPB. Doctrines such as the planetary chain or the 7 races at once give a clue to the sevenfold nature of man, for each principle is correlated to a plane, a planet, and a race, and the human principles are on every plane correlated to sevenfold occult forces, those of the higher planes being of tremendous power, the abuse of which would cause incalculable evil to humanity. A clue which is perhaps no clue to the present generation, especially to the Westerners, protected as they are by their very blindness and ignorant materialistic disbelief in the occult, but a clue which would nevertheless have been very real in the early centuries of the Christian era to people fully convinced of the reality of occultism and entering a cycle of degradation which made them ripe for abuse of occult powers and sorcery of the worst description. So, what has been brought out in the secret doctrine and Isis, Ocean, Gita, Voice of the Silence, and all of the other surrounding literature is only the skeleton of the scheme. And that skeleton in itself is a minute amount of the secret doctrine of the ages. The masters could only bring out a portion of that knowledge that would be intelligible to our minds. This is the 21st century. We're still struggling with understanding the philosophy. So, as our mind opens up, as the heart becomes intelligent, and as the mind becomes compassionate, this knowledge that we put in will come through as light of the world. It gives guidance, it gives courage to stay with it, it gives light that you can help you through discrimination know a little bit what to do for the other in their sorrowful days, and it makes one charitable towards all human family. We are one. The brotherhood is based on scientific principles. It is a fact in nature. We all come from the same essence. There's no separation of anything. Not humanity itself, but nothing else is separate from us either. Since we are the human family of the gods, then we are permanently connected to them also, since the hierarchies, the divine hierarchies, that are the ones that give us these principles. So it says here, thus in a seventh sub-race of a fourth root race, the fourth character is dominant, but softened and improved by the activity of the seventh influence in the sub-race. But in the fourth sub-race, both the major and the minor effect are in line and produce a tremendous intensification of the fourth principle. So we need to understand the rounds. We need to understand that our principles are correlated to the round and that these things are real. It likewise, the manvantaric, if likewise the manvantaric influences are also present, as in Atlantis, the utmost disaster may result, which it did. Going to the opposite pole, a seventh sub-race of a seventh root race in a seventh round means attained divinity. All of humanity then, whatever is left of the individuals that have achieved this higher aspect, attains divinity. What does the secret doctrine say? That we are all going to be Mahatmas, that we're all going to be perfected beings. There is a galaxy of perfected beings. Galaxy of perfected beings. The Kumaras are the ones that lighted our mind, and they come from a constellation. This alternate piling up and neutralization of tendencies, conditioned by the karmic influences of definite thoughts and deeds of the past, brings about violent fluctuations in deeds and character. So we are what we are because of what we have done in the past, as well as what we're doing now. And sometimes we see characters that are kind of thrown amongst us that really do not belong when you look at them, because they are very animalistic, their conscience is not awakened yet. And it says that because of the recapitulation of some of these mighty cycles, a primitive violence unhampered by a conscious not yet awake is thrown amongst us like a chaka or lebengula of African wells. This student had to look it up. It means the green grasses of South Africa. So we get someone from there incarnating amongst us, or a Genghis Khan from the Asian plains. And what are these? Tigers uncaged among civilized peoples, and they cause tremendous havoc. Killing, violence, all that animalistic instincts has not been yet lived through, so now this mixture is amongst us too. This is Kali-Yuga. Everything is mixed. And the dark cycle will run its course. Few men, it is stated, can penetrate the secret of the cycles, but he who retains a firm footing, a steadfast holding on to that thread, self-watchful, balanced vigilantly against impact from all sides, has no fear of the past, and never misses the bugle call of the past spiritual glories that are also projected into us. So we have those that reincarnate amongst us, but what about the forgotten past, the perfected ones, the ones that want to help humanity, also incarnate amongst us? HPB being one of them. She's referred to as the Bodhisattva in many of the writings, and it is stated that that personality pretending in that body of HPB, pretending. So we do not know these perfected beings truly in their character. We judge them by their appearance, and that is a big mistake. A bodhisattva is someone who has sacrificed his or her life for the benefit of humanity. And so we need to be very careful as to how we designate these beings who come amongst us to guide us. Thank you. Now we will answer your questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
The quote that you read from The Secret Doctrine
Yes.
mentioned something about 5 cosmic forces or 5 occult forces. What's that reference to, please?
Sevenfold occult forces?
Yes.
What do you think they are?
Well, I when I think about it, I started with the elements.
Well, go higher.
Go higher. I can't go higher.
What is the what is the triad in you?
Okay, go high. Okay, so.
What's the permanent in you?
All right, the Atma
Buddhi Manas. She says this is a general, because the primordial substance, the substratum of the whole universe, is a spiritual fluid. (289) Secret Doctrine 1. This spiritual fluid is disseminated everywhere. It's the substratum of the universe. So it's always there. It upholds. It's like a matrix. It upholds everything.
It is the Akasha?
Yes?
Okay.
Higher aspects of Akasha. She says, in this round and in this race, there is not a one who will be able to perceive it even in the highest trance, what that is. Our science is trying to find what dark matter is. Good luck to them, because it is not with these material aspects that we're going to perceive what is the dark matter of our universe. It is our spiritual senses that has to be activated for us to be able to know what it is we're talking about. Okay, and this is the first. There is a first logos, excuse me. She calls that unmanifested. Second, manifested. Third, being man. Manasa. We are manasas. Mind principle. We're manasas. Manasaputras. So, the mind principle obviously is a very important aspect to where we are going. If we don't sit at meditation and cultivate discrimination, what was the prescription that Carolina gave us when we did the Patanjali's yoga aphorisms to put into effect every day? First, we have to every day sit somewhere quietly and imbibe our soul. What is that called? Concentration. Concentration is fixing the mind on one object, subject, or place. And when we can fix it and hold it, it becomes contemplation. And when contemplation is continued on a material subject or a material object, it becomes samadhi. Trance. This is, you have to go to these places if you want to perceive these higher aspects in you, is what this student is getting about. And when you are conducting concentration, contemplation, and samadhi in regard to one object only, it becomes sanyama. There is no equivalent word to that one in English. This is a Sanskrit terminology. Mr. Judge says perhaps we can call it perfect concentration.
What is samadhi?
When you are pointing or fixing your mind on one material object or subject, that becomes samadhi.
So it's contemplation?
Contemplation is the continuation of concentration on
samadhi
one.
Samadhi is higher than concentration.
Yes, samadhi is high trance.
High trance.
And that one is perfect concentration, because you have become what? One-pointed. One-pointed. When you become one-pointed, what is happening? The lower mind and the higher mind are uniting. That antaskarana bridge then disappears eventually, and you live in your higher ego.
Your higher self.
Yeah. So this is the path, and those of us who are willing to go along with it will go along with it. If we do not cultivate it, is someone else coming to do it for us for this work? Because there's a whole bunch of people out there who are going to gurus in India and Pakistan and China and all over the place. There is no such guru that can actually do this work for us. When we are ready, the guru appears. But what can the guru do? Direct you. It cannot do the work for you. The nature of our lives demand that we do our own work. There is no such thing as forgiveness in nature. Nature does not forgive. It gives us another chance to correct the mistake we have conducted because we didn't know better. So we learn by repeating our experiences through this recapitulation effort. Whether we know it or not, our lives are dependent on what we have done in our previous lives, but this one is the stepping stone to the next one. So we can change the mode of our thinking, speech, and action here and now. And that is why HPB came to show us the way. She said, do not follow me. Follow the path that the masters are showing you. Yes?
All right, the second logos.
Yes.
The manifested.
Yes.
Is that the dot?
Yes. This is the radiation that starts the whole manvantaric process.
And the first logos is behind that?
Yes, but it says that once it radiates, it disappears into night again, into darkness. It has nothing to do with manifestation. And the only difference between the religious thought and the true thought is that they do not go anywhere beyond this manifestation of the third level. We start right here. We're stuck in the substantive aspect of life, and there is no perfectibility that we can achieve. There is no spiritual essence that we can refer to, and we are left to the dogma of the Christian era that where these sinful little beings just appear on the earth from nowhere for this one life period in all this intellectual capability that we have obtained through many, many lives. We are talking about 18 million since we have separated into sexes. Creativity is in us. We are the product of creativity, and we can repeat that creativity through ourselves, and yet we're made these little insects with no ability for anything.
Committed for one life.
And committed to one life and hell and heaven, which there's no such thing in nature. And any intelligent human being who can think for himself or herself would know that that dogma is a man-made dogma, has nothing to do with reality. Yes?
Oh, okay, so that takes care of three levels, or three forces.
No.
No?
These are the three higher aspects. Each one then again divides into sevens.
So what are the seven?
Or you're going to ask me what the 7 levels of Akasha is?
No, no. I'm going back to my first question.
Okay.
I'm trying to identify the 7 cosmic forces or 7 occult forces, and you brought me to Atma, Buddhi, and Manas, and
Okay.
that's where I'm still there.
Yeah, this is a triad that you work through yourself, internal to yourself.
Okay.
Are you going to be able to cognize what is outside if you do not cognize it within yourself? Is this a student's question to you? Because HPB says everything that we know is through that ray that is within us, because its root is connected to the logos.
Okay.
Okay? That's where we come from. Everything comes from that dot.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
So that's where you come from. That's every one of us. Everything else as well. She says this primordial spiritual fluid is everywhere. And she calls it the one life.
The one life.
So we are part of that one life. We float in Jiva.
All right, does love...
Life principle.
Okay, does love...
How do we perceive any of that if we do not perceive it through ourselves? So a human being is a small replica of his universe. Everything that's out there is what she's saying is within ourselves. These occult forces, she says, in the higher realms are the ones that cause tremendous damage to humanity when not handled correctly. For beneficent purposes. Because Kali had discovered, Kali, in the Secret Doctrine, she mentions him. Kali had made a machine, and he stepped on it, and through himself he could energize his own machine, which is what the Atlanteans were doing. They had air vehicles. That's what it was called, not aeroplanes. Air vehicles. They were in it and they were energizing the vehicle through themselves because they knew how to what? Access the sun's energy through themselves.
Um, I'm sorry. You all right? You mentioned something about the planetary cycle where there's a recapitulation.
In your sleep.
Yes. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah.
The planetary cycle aspect.
Yeah, it says here. This student was quite taken back. The sleep is a recapitulation of the reincarnation cycle of man. It is also a recapitulation of the whole planetary cycle of his existence. The ones that I had put here. All of the races. And we had talked about the land pieces where we were developed, the 7 races on Earth. And so all those experiences that we have gone through, we recapitulate, live through again in our sleep, because our life is the resultant of all that we have lived before. Where the soul is concerned, what does she say we have to consider? There is the eternal now, not past, not future. The soul lives in the eternal now. All of his experiences is what has brought it here, but it lives with all of the knowledge. It's the personality that is not aware of it. The higher aspect, the one who is the sustainer, who is the enjoyer, the redeemer, is aware of it. The one that never sleeps in us. That's who we really are. We're not the personality. That's who we are. Thou art that. Secret doctrine. And we identify with this, but it is imperative to change the thinking around and identify with it. When you sit in meditation, you identify with it. You're trying to transcend to it. You are not transcending with the help of this, you're transcending with the help of it. It slowly elevates you up. If it was from here we were going to go up, we would never be able to achieve it. It's the higher that lifts when we are aligned with it. And so when you find that energy string, hold on to it. Don't let it ever go. Wherever it takes you, that's what we are supposed to be doing. That's what it is.
Yeah,
Yes?
I have a question about meditation, because sometimes and very often I meditate and very concentrated in myself, and my mind travels.
Oh, natural.
It's traveling and see amazing place, amazing beings, and most of the time it beings on prayer and a tree of life. It's amazing, and I paint it. For me, it's a seat of creativity. I have to. I don't paint. It's too perfect. You cannot paint it the perfect. This kind of perfect, but just the mystery of it.
Yes.
And I would like to know if it is meditation or what it is.
Depends on what realm of the mind you are on.
Because it's pure
She
love.
says, there's 2 aspects to your mind, and you know which ones they are. There's the higher, relatively speaking, and there is the lower. This is the kamamanas, because it is wedded to your desires. The higher is your divine mind. Now, in earth life, this is one principle. In earth life, only when you're in incarnation, it works this way. It divides. It's like this, and this is the antaskarana here. This is Atma, Buddhi, Manas. And these are your quaternary, the 4 lower, and the passion principle is so developed in this race that it pulls the mind that way. This is this one, the one that is desire guided. The desire, in other words, is personal. It's personal. In this one, it's impersonal. It is for the benefit of all. It's altruistic. And this one is personal. It wants power. It wants material success. It wants position. It wants title. Now, she says, this masquerades under a lot of things because it's very intelligent. Intelligence is cold. It has no spirituality in it. And a lot of our scientists are very, very intellectual, but that doesn't mean they have any iota of spirituality in them. She says that because of this imbalanced concentration on the substance side of their nature, this aspect shrinks. And this overpowers that one. It cannot express through the lower mind because it is not allowed to do so. Its nature is not of earth, it's of the higher heavens. And it tries to influence and come through. But if we do not allow it to come through, it can't do so. Herb, I think you need to turn that off, don't you? John has fallen asleep.
Turn it off, John.
We're just discussing things. It's too long for the... I'm going to discuss it, but it doesn't need to